The punch exploded like thunder inside the ring. It was just a practice run, but the speed, precision, and boldness with which Muhammad Ali dodged, shook his head, and responded with a cross were enough to silence everyone around. It wasn't luck. It wasn't chance. Ali had an invisible, almost magical strategy that transformed him into something more than just an ordinary fighter. He called it dancing, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. But what no one realized was that behind that simple phrase lay brutal discipline, almost inhuman repetition, and a secret few dared to confront. Ali trained his mind as much as he trained his fists. He didn't enter the ring just to fight his opponent. He entered to defeat his opponent's mind. While his opponents breathed heavily, counted the rounds, and gathered strength in their muscles. He studied every look, every breath, every doubt that crept into his rival's face. Ali knew that before the physical knockout, there was the psychological knockout, and he mastered this like no other. "You're too slow to hit me," he said, dancing around the ring with an insolent smile, while the other fighter grew angry. But anger is the enemy of precision, and that was where he carved out the space for victory. The audience laughed. The journalists called it arrogance, but it was cold calculation. He provoked to destabilize, and when his rival entered the game, he was already defeated before the bell. However, don't think Ali was just a show. Behind the spotlights, there was a man obsessed with winning. He ran through the dark streets before dawn, sweating in silence, muttering phrases only he understood. "I'm the greatest. I'll prove I'm the greatest." It wasn't vanity, it was belief. He repeated it until he was convinced, because he knew that, in the ring, his conviction would be heavier than any punch. There were nights when his teammates would find him lying on the gym floor, exhausted, but still muttering victory phrases, as if training his mind to never accept defeat. And this was the first hidden tactic. Ali wasn't content with being physically stronger. He trained to believe more than anyone else. The secret to his success began before each fight. While his rivals practiced their punches, Ali practiced the future. He would predict out loud which round he would knock out his opponent. They laughed at him. They thought it was bravado, but when the knockout happened exactly as he predicted, it wasn't magic, it was the mind. He conditioned his body and his confidence to obey what he had already declared, and there was something darker behind this confidence. He wasn't afraid to pay the price. His training went beyond his limits. Pain was a daily companion, and he accepted it with a naturalness that frightened even those closest to him. "Train hard now and live the rest of your life as a champion," he repeated. This was his belief, his creed. He'd rather bleed in training than bleed in front of the world. But there was also a human price. Often, his knees would buckle, his body would scream, but Ali wouldn't stop. Pain is temporary, glory is eternal. This phrase wasn't empty motivation. It was the brutal way he justified every drop of sweat that fell to the ground. Ali understood that the secret wasn't in being more talented, but in being willing to suffer more than the other. While some saw only a smiling fighter, inside him there was a silent war. He wondered if he could endure another round of suffering, another endless race, another restless night. But he always responded with the same credo: "I believe I can beat anyone, because I believe in myself more than they believe in themselves." This unshakable faith wasn't religion, it wasn't luck. It was a daily process, built on pain, discipline, and daring. And that's what made Ali more than a boxer. He became a symbol, a man who transformed the ring into a stage, pain into a weapon, and belief into victory. And in this first secret, perhaps the most powerful, Muhammad Ali showed the world something few understood. Before you can conquer the body, you must conquer the mind. Because when you truly believe, no one can extinguish your flame. "I do." The doctor looked at Ali and said coldly, "Your body can't handle this pace." He no longer had the same explosiveness. His muscles trembled at the end of workouts, and his knees showed signs of weakness. Any other fighter would have backed down. But Ali saw pain as a battlefield that needed to be conquered before any opponent. He treated every medical warning as a personal challenge, always responding with the same tone: "If my body fails, my mind will carry you to victory." This was his second secret weapon, turning limitations into fuel. During training, when his sparring partners tried to take him down with hard punches, Ali absorbed the blows, leaning against the ropes, and letting his physical endurance blend with strategic intelligence. This was the birth of the famous rope-a-dope, the tactic in which he would let himself be beaten until his opponent tired, then counterattacked like lightning. It wasn't a lack of strength, it was tactical genius. Ali used his own pain as a trap. The audience saw danger, the commentators screamed madness, but in his mind, it was pure calculation. He understood that resistance was as deadly as attack. The secret lay in enduring the unbearable. Ollie said, "I only start counting my sit-ups when it starts to hurt." This phrase wasn't just a nice phrase, it was reality. He believed that pain was the gateway to true greatness. While many would stop at the first sign of exhaustion, he continued, convinced that beyond that limit lay a strength his rival would never know, and that was what set him apart. Behind the scenes, there were times when he could barely lift his arms. His teammates warned him, "There, you'll destroy yourself." But he would smile and reply, "A man who isn't willing to die for what he believes in isn't ready to live as a champion." This obstinacy wasn't just vanity, it was an internal pact. He was willing to lose everything except his faith in victory, and each fight was proof of this. Against George Foreman, in the rumble in the jungle, the world believed Ollie had no chance. Foreman was younger, stronger, a true physical monster. But Ollie had patience. He remained pinned to the ropes for 7 rounds, taking beatings, taking punches that would have knocked anyone out. The crowd roared in despair, thinking he was finished. And that's exactly where the strategy revealed itself. In the 8th round, when Foreman was exhausted, Ollie exploded with a perfect sequence. The giant fell, and the whole world witnessed that pain, when endured wisely, becomes a weapon. This was one of Ollie's greatest secrets, the courage to endure what no one else would. He didn't see weakness as an enemy, but as a tool. He used every physical limitation as a way to surprise and turn the tables. His greatness lay not only in the punches he threw, but in the patience with which he endured the punches he received. And behind it all was an unshakable belief. Ollie said he trained not just for himself, but to inspire the millions who watched him. Every time he fell and got back up, he knew that on the other side of the world there was someone who also needed to rise from their own falls. This connection with the audience was part of the secret. He didn't fight just for titles. He fought to prove that human endurance could defeat any giant. This legacy didn't die in the ring. It's a lesson that spans generations. When everything seems against you, resist. Victory may not come in the first round, but patience and belief transform defeats into historic comebacks. This was Ollie's creed. He believed that enduring pain was the key to true immortality, and I believe it. Now, if this story has touched you, if you too feel that life sometimes pushes you against the ropes, but you still resist, I invite you to support this video. Like it, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. This is what helps us continue bringing powerful stories like this, so that more people learn from Muhammad Ali's secrets and are inspired to never give up. After all, together, we can keep this flame of resistance and victory alive. I believe that the day Muhammad Ali stood up to the United States government was the day he showed the world that his fight went beyond boxing. When he received the draft for the Vietnam War, everyone expected him to accept he was the world champion, the symbol of America, and his presence in the army would be perfect propaganda. But Ali refused. Before the cameras, with the same firmness he used in the ring, he said, "No Viet Cong ever called me nigger." This sentence landed like a punch in the face of an entire nation. And it was then that he revealed another secret, the courage to be true to himself, even when the whole world demands otherwise. The consequences were brutal. The government sued him, stripped him of his title, and suspended his fighting license. He lost precious years of his career and was banned from the ring. Many called him a coward, others insulted him, saying he was ungrateful to his country, but Ollie wouldn't give in. When asked why, he calmly responded with fire in his eyes, "I know where the truth lies, and I'd rather lose everything than lose my soul." This was his third secret, turning principles into a shield. He fought not just with his fists, but with dignity. The world watched in astonishment. A man at the height of his glory, willing to throw everything away for a conviction. This required more courage than facing George Foreman or Joe Frazier. Because in that ring the opponent was invisible, it was prejudice, injustice, the weight of the system. Ollie accepted the solitude of this fight. He suffered debts, was persecuted, lost sponsorships, but he never gave up. He believed his voice was worth more than any belt, and when he finally returned to the ring, he was no longer just a fighter, he was a symbol. Every punch he threw against an opponent was also a punch against those who tried to silence him. The audience that had previously called him a traitor now welcomed him as a hero. He had not only reclaimed his place in the sport, he had risen to something greater, the voice of the voiceless. This battle outside the ring showed that Ali's secret wasn't just in technique or training. It was in his ability to withstand external pressure without giving up who he was. While others bowed down to save their careers, he held his head high and said, "Courage lies not in killing, but in not betraying what you believe in." And there's something profound about this. When you stand true to your beliefs, the world can knock you down, but it can never break you. Ollie knew he couldn't control the decisions of justice, but he could control his stance toward them. This control was his true victory. He lost belts, but gained eternal respect. With every interview, with every word, Ollie turned pain into a lesson. He showed that the greatest secret to success wasn't just winning within the rules, but having the courage to change the rules when they were unfair. He inspired millions, not just by winning fights, but by proving that life requires more than brawn. It requires character, and it's impossible not to wonder. How many of us would have the courage to give up everything for a principle? This question is the true hook of the story. Ollie faced what seemed impossible and emerged greater than he entered, and his belief resonates to this day. I'd rather be remembered for my courage than for my titles. That was his credo, and I believe it. The bell hadn't even sounded yet, and Ollie was already calling the shots. During the minute's rest, he asked for the bench to be removed early. He wanted to stand, eyes fixed on his opponent, breathing shallowly, as if setting the beat of the music. "Look at me," he whispered without moving his lips. And the other looked away for a moment. Ollie smiled. Those who avoid looking betray the rhythm. This was the fourth secret, controlling the time. Not just the time on the stopwatch, but the time that resides in his opponent's mind. He marked the pulse of the fight with small signals, a touch of his glove before the bell, a dance-like turn of the torso, an extra step to the left to force his opponent's right hand to delay. As the stands erupted, Ali remained in an almost musical silence, counting internally. 1, 2, 3, pause, provoke, retreat, enter. "He breathes when I tell him to, attacks when I allow him to," he murmured to his coach. On the other side, the strong man lost his rhythm, struck out of time, became irritated, and wasted energy. There was no rush. He knew that a fight is like a clock. Whoever turns the hand first decides when the other will tire. He studied minimal habits like someone memorizing a secret map. He'd repeat in a low voice. His right shoulder drops when he lies the jab. His chin goes up on the sidestep. He breathes through his mouth in the bedroom. In training, he forced his partners to imitate these habits until their bodies responded on their own, without thinking. If he blinks, go inside. If he tires, touch the ropes. If he opens his elbow, slice it in half. The trainer would ask, "Are you sure?" And Ollie would reply, "I don't need certainty, I need reading." In the locker room, he'd scribble arrows on an old chalkboard, marking exits and entrances like city streets. Before the bell, he'd look again. He takes 2 steps and stops on his heel. He'll stop on the 6th. When the round arrived, he did exactly what he'd predicted, not by guesswork, but by extreme attention. This was Ali's invisible science, learning the other until he knew what he'd do before he realized it himself. During practice rounds, he would clap his hands to synchronize his stride, as if imposing an invisible beat on the other. When he needed to break the pattern, he would deliberately change the rhythm, feign fatigue, and leave his chin exposed for a second to encourage a mistake. "Show him the right opening and he'll give up the fight," he would say. This patient stubbornness confounded giants, turning the ring into a chessboard, and each misstep cost him dearly. In the end, what seemed like instinct was actually study, memory, and courage. The voice was a weapon. It wasn't just for rhyming. It was for planting ideas in the enemy's head and watering them until they became fear. In interviews, Ali gave nicknames, promised rounds, described scenes in detail. "It'll fall in 8. The reporters laughed. His rival laughed along, but a grain of sand remained. In the 7th, when his legs felt heavy and the air burned, the promise returned like a hammer. What if he's right? Ollie understood that the fight begins at the press conference. He won the crowd's attention first, then he defeated the man. "You can't catch me," he said, dancing with words alone. His opponent entered the ring to prove him wrong, and ended up fighting against a phrase. The more he tried to destroy the myth, the more energy he expended, the deeper he fell into the web. Ali didn't insult out of vanity. He insulted to write the script in his opponent's head and force him to act on it. By the time the crowd repeated his rhymes, Ollie had already won half the war. The sound of their voices became a wall. "I'm the greatest," he shouted, and thousands responded. The rival accepted an arena where the other was king, and that changed everything. Psychology became muscle. The audience turned into a dead end. Those who fight a body tire. Those who fight a legend exhaust themselves. And this exhaustion was exactly what Ollie wanted before unleashing his first straight punch. There was also an economy of movement. A secret fuse saw. While his opponent wasted entire explosions on empty punches, Ollie saved energy by the millimeter. The dodge didn't need to be pretty, it needed to be enough. An inch off the mark, and the punch turned into wind, to loose steps, and his body rested without seeming to rest. He counted his breaths like someone counting coins. 3 short, 1 long, holding his breath for the straight punch, releasing it for the jab. In the midst of the storm, he maintained the calm of someone controlling the rain. When he decided to accelerate, he did so for 30 seconds and then returned to silence, like a conductor opening and closing an orchestra. His rival never knew when the next wave would come, and this unknown weighed more heavily than any glove. Ali gained seconds of life in each round. By adding seconds, he won fights. By adding fights, he became a legend. If necessary, he would lean against the ropes and transform wood into a spring, absorbing blows that would knock any man off balance. He didn't despair, he smiled. "Are you tired?" he provoked, just to hear the others sigh. When he heard the sigh, he'd go in, short strike, head out of line, quick embrace, sidestep, disappear. He'd repeat this cycle until his opponent's mind cracked. Thus he won not by magic, but by simple mathematics. Less spending, more decisiveness. And, at the right moment, he'd accelerate as if he'd kept a sun inside his chest, and the drama didn't end with the final bell. Leaving the ring, Ali chatted with children, shook hands, and rhymed on the sidewalk, transforming each night into a memory. It was a strategy beyond sport, winning hearts so that, on a difficult day, an entire city would fight with him. This kept him going when his body began to take its toll. When his arms grew heavy and the days slowed, he no longer needed to shout. He simply appeared silently, and the crowd completed his rhymes. He understood that a true champion doesn't just win rounds, he wins over time. And one day, far from the ring, he would prove that the flame he carries within is greater than any trophy. The next step in this story is a simple gesture that left the world speechless, and that's why, before recounting this scene, I repeat the same credo that kept him alive through every turn. I believe, because glory passes, but memories remain. And Ali worked with the memory with the same discipline he used to deliver jabs. He knew that a hero lives in people's minds when he delivers history, not just results. Therefore, the scene that follows has no gloves, no gong, no referee. There is silence, steady hands, and an entire world holding its breath. It is the final proof that greatness is more than strength. It is light that spans generations. I believe that flame wavered as his hand trembled. The stadium held its breath. Gloveless, gongless, Muhammad Ali raised the torch before millions of eyes who knew his name but had never seen him so exposed. The fire reflected in the sweat on his forehead. The tremor, which many would call weakness, became language. Each wavering said, "I'm still here." Time, which he tamed in the ring, now took its toll. Ali didn't back down. He made his own body an altar and offered the entire gesture, without hiding what hurt. There was a muffled question in the stands. Will he make it? The silence weighed, more heavily than any glove. When the flame touched the cauldron, the night opened in light. There was no cry of victory. There was a sigh of humanity. Ali transformed illness into a script, fear into choreography. He held the world for seconds and restored hope. The torch burned outside, but it was inside that the fire spoke of who he still was. And those who doubted understood, without explanation, that greatness does not die, changes shape and continues guiding light always. Backstage that night, while the stadium still vibrated, Ali took a shallow breath and smirked. There was no belt to raise, no interview to provoke. There was a silent pact with every person who had felt fear, shame, or limitation. He knew that by showing his trembling, he was giving the world permission to admit its own falls. It was his old tactic on a new field, transforming weakness into a weapon, expectation into time on his side, the audience into a war. The flame lit high above became a mirror. Those who looked didn't just see a hero, they also saw their own hidden struggle, and this hurt and healed at the same time. He waved slowly, like someone conducting an orchestra, and the stadium responded. With a sea of hands, for the first time, victory wasn't measured in blows, but in silences that understood each other. Ali had won. Days before, he had rehearsed, counting blows as rounds. He asked them not to hide their trembling. He wanted truth, not perfection. He wanted to prove that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the overcoming of it. From this torch came lessons that apply to anyone's life. First, declare the result and train your body to pursue it, as he did when predicting the round. Second, transform pain into method. Don't deny fatigue, use it as an alarm to make better decisions. Third, conserve energy with details, millimeters that avoid blows and spare for the comeback. Fourth, Use your voice to write the script in the world's head. Words create scenarios where you become the protagonist. Fifth, protect your principles, like someone protecting their guard. Without this, the fight is lost before the bell. Sixth, accept the truth of your body and still deliver presence. Seventh, train the patience of someone who knows the clock of the soul. In life, the ring is the mind. Control time and fear tires. Sustain the gesture, that when the torch went out and the stadium left, the question that drives champions remained, what do you do with what you lack? Ali answered with a lifetime of strength. When his body refused to explode, he built presence. When his career demanded silence, he upheld principles. When illness tried to shrink him, he offered himself completely before the world and lit a fire that doesn't depend on muscles. The final secret is simple and hard. Choose, each day, to be true to who you say you are. The rest is training, patience, and time. If you fall, get up. If you tremble, carry on. If doubt arises, declare it. The flame that guides us is not the one the wind sees. It is the one we feed in secret. And when life rings the bell, remember, the man who planted light in the silence, and make your gesture, even if it is not perfect. This is how victory takes root. This is how fear learns to retreat. This is how stories span generations. May this fire remind you to protect your values, and carry on even when the ground shakes. Today, I believe,